We are live. Mona of the Prickly
Amazing.
Pear and PP Body is here with me today. What's up,
Hi,
Mona?
thanks for having me. I'm super excited to be here.
Absolutely. I'd like to start by saying your content, you have me laughing all the time. I'm dying. Your
Good.
marketing is genius, and your
Thank
reels,
you.
you're so like authentically yourself and
Thank
not
you.
afraid to show yourself, which I really appreciate, and I think we need more of in the plant community.
I appreciate that. That's really at the forefront of my mind with everything that I do. Authenticity is my jam. So, I've always wanted to cultivate that ever since I started the Prickly Pear.
And when was that?
Um, I started the Prickly Pear in 2017. It was summer, like July-ish,
Okay.
2017.
So
And
you've
it
been
was
at it for a
not my
minute.
life plan to be a business owner, but it just happened. So
That's awesome. I
yeah,
guess we'll get there in a little bit. Why don't we start with some basics? Where are you from? Where are you
yeah,
talking to me from actually currently? You're in
yeah,
Sacramento, correct?
yeah. I'm in Sacramento, California in my office. But I'm originally from Arizona.
Okay.
My family is first generation immigrants here. So they came here from Iran. My mom and dad came here when they were 18.
Okay.
So yeah, that is, my backstory. And then they landed in Arizona and I grew up in the desert.
Do you get misidentified as Hispanic ever?
You know, I do, but not as much as Italian.
Okay.
When you see me in certain angles, I've got an Italian like nose. I've got this like look to me that's pretty Italian. And so a lot of people ask me that. But with the dark hair, and the skin color, it's generally people kind of guess that I'm like Middle Easterner. But yeah, sometimes I get Hispanic, but mostly I get Italian, which is, different for me.
Yeah, I asked because that's kind of what I assumed, and I'm Filipino, and people assume I'm Hispanic all the time.
Yeah, yeah,
So,
totally.
but that's rad that your family's from
Yeah,
Iran. Very
yeah,
cool.
yeah, yeah, pretty cool for sure.
So, were you
So
exposed? You were exposed to cactus and habitat pretty early then,
yeah,
right?
I was born actually in South Carolina, but what we spent maybe 3 weeks there, and then my parents moved to Arizona. So I spent 27 years of my life in Arizona. So really born and raised for me there because that's all I remember. So yeah, the desert was my home.
Mm, mm.
Yep. So that's what I grew up around. I mean, I remember my mom's always loved plants. And so we would go on walks when we were little, and there were barrel cacti and all sorts of cactuses all around. And she'd just like pick off fruit, kind of open it up while we're walking and peel off the juice and the meat and be like, taste it. It wasn't like, that was just like the norm for us. And I don't even remember her even complaining about getting pokes in her hands.
Mm.
It was just like, that's what my mom did.
That's so funny because I've seen some of your videos where you're going and harvesting prickly pear fruit, and
Yeah.
you're like, I'm not afraid of these thorns,
I,
and you just grab them and
I know. And people are like, they're like, wow, you're so good at it. I still get poked, but it's like your body kind of gets used to it. And also, how to maneuver your hands where you're like, oh, I'm going to get poked on this side of my hand. And then just don't use this side, for the rest of the project. And then I'll pluck it out later.
oh,
So
okay.
it's very like, I'm pretty good at dodging spikes, but it still happens. And there's no like glorious glove that protects you from cactus spikes. It just
Yeah.
comes with the territory.
Yeah. Yeah. So when did you originally like start to collect or go towards plants?
Yeah, it didn't really happen till I left Arizona. I was 27 years old. And like most of us do, I went through a really, really hard breakup. And
Mm,
that was what I'm going on 10 years ago. I'm 36 now. No,
okay.
that's 9 years ago. And my mom would always send us to nature or on a trip into like camping or something to a national park whenever we were going through hardship.
Mm,
And I remember going through this breakup, and my mom's like, well, why don't you go to Lake Tahoe? And I was like, oh, well, I've never been there. And so I went there with a couple of my cousins, ended up loving it and moving there 6 months later.
oh,
And
cool.
when I left the desert, all of a sudden, I just was like collecting succulents and cacti. It just kind of like, I think I just innately missed it and I didn't even realize it, but I started collecting plants because back in Arizona, I didn't collect plants. Like it was my front yard, backyard, my parents'
Mm,
house, my sister's house, my apartment. It was
yeah.
just all surrounded by that kind of look. So it wasn't something I thought about collecting. So that's when it started, when I had left Arizona.
That's cool. So
Yeah.
arguably the heartbreak brought you to the plants.
Yeah, exactly. And so I ended up moving to South Lake Tahoe, lived there for a couple years. It was a blast, especially if you're single. And
Yeah.
then I was like, all right, I think I need to like move to a little bit more goal oriented like city because it was really fun there, but the fish just weren't going to cut it. I was like trying to like settle down at this point, meet someone. And so I ended up moving to Sacramento, California, thinking that I was just going to do a pit stop here and then move to San Diego.
Mm,
And I ended up staying in Sacramento, and that's how I got here.
awesome. Well, Lake Tahoe is beautiful. Some of the bluest water I've ever seen in my entire
I
life.
know.
And we had a house on the Keys when I was a kid. It's my dad's friend's house that we would stay at for
Yeah.
the 4th of July. And the 4th of
Yeah.
July is cracking over there.
Oh, yeah. It's super fun. I mean, honestly, every holiday weekend is just bumping out in Tahoe. Like, it is a great time.
Yeah, totally. And you got the casinos right there on the north
I know.
side,
It's
right?
a dangerously fun place.
Sure, sure. So you moved to Sacramento. You had already been collecting by this point, and it was
Yeah.
what, most cactus and succulents?
It was mostly succulents, to be honest, because cactuses really, you have to be a super hardcore plant person to keep a cactus alive inside. Like you
Mm-hmm.
just got to know the plant. It's just a lot. And they generally live their best life outside. But I had this like collection of succulents. And I really wasn't that exposed to succulents until I moved to California because in Arizona, it's so hot. Like you really have the hardy of the hardiest out there of
Sure.
cactuses, agave, and succulents can be a little more sensitive. So I started collecting them here, and yeah, I moved a lot during my few years, like kind of figuring out what I was doing here in California, and I would just haul all my succulents with me. At one point I had like 300 succulents and cacti that
Wow.
I would, I was kind of a nomad at that time where I didn't, there's like, there was a lot going on. So I would have friends where I would leave my succulent collection at their house
Mm,
because I couldn't accommodate it where I was living. And so, yeah, it just became this like obsession and nobody knew what they were. My friends thought I was crazy. They're like, what do you collect succulents? And I was like, yes. And so that's kind of my thing until, I met my husband actually in Sacramento and then we ended up getting settled down here.
now, was there some struggle in those nomadic times?
Yeah. I mean, I think like all of us do in our late 20s, I had just turned 30 when I left South Lake Tahoe and
Mm-hmm.
I was single. And I thought to myself, man, like, you go through like when you were 20 and you thought you'd be married at 25 and,
Mm,
all these things of, and I'm like, I'm a bright young woman. Like, I'm fit, I'm happy. I try to be my best every day. And, I didn't, you go through all these weird questioning times. And, I was also such a dreamer and I've always just been a free bird.
mm,
And my mom likes to call me her wild horse because I just don't like to conform. And
mm,
that's where the authenticity is really so important to me because there's just so many societal norms and construct within
yes.
culture, religion, and just society in general. And it's like we're kind of trained, especially as a female, to live within the confinement of a box. Don't
Mm,
step outside of it. That's scary. A guy won't love you, a girl won't love you. This won't happen. And I've always just I've done whatever I wanted. So
yeah.
yeah, during that time was like this questioning phase, but I just knew that, it'll come to me in time. And I ended up loving it in Sacramento. And I ended up meeting my boyfriend, who is now my husband. And
Yeah.
he was a transplant from New Jersey. And we both just loved it here.
I'm wondering how much of that might have been cultural norms as well, being
Mhm.
that you're where your family's from.
Middle Eastern. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. I
Yeah.
mean, my family is Baha'i. I don't know if
Hmm.
you've heard of the
Sure.
Baha'i
Yeah.
faith. It's actually a wonderful, wonderful religion. And I don't really identify with religion and religious construct anymore,
Uh-huh.
but it was a really cool religion. And if I decided to be religious again, I probably would be Baha'i, but because it's like the most normal. But
Yeah.
I mean, that's just my opinion. But I just don't like to put myself
Hmm.
around hard, strict rules. And
Yeah.
so, that was it. And being Middle Eastern, I was very lucky. My parents are so not Middle Easterners. Like, we have a
Mm.
ton of Persian friends, but my mom and dad are just legitimately so cool. I don't know if we can cuss on this, but I'm going to
Sure, I
refrain.
cuss a lot.
Okay, I was like
Yeah,
to say my
I'm an
parents are
avid
really
cusser.
fucking cool. Yeah. So they're really, really fucking cool. And I actually highlight my mom on my social media a lot because she's just like a gem of a human. And my dad has like the purest heart. And I'm just grateful that I have them in my life.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
Awesome. So yeah, Baha'i is a great introduction to religion. I was raised Catholic. I'm envious of that,
Oh,
honestly, because I have read
yeah.
up on it, and I had a friend that was to practice whatever Baha'ism. Is that how you would say it?
Baha'ism. Yeah. You just like is a Baha'i. Yeah.
So have you carved your own spiritual path from that? Do you still have some kind of spirituality in your life?
Yeah. I definitely, I really, I really think I worship Mama Earth now. Like, I kind
Yes.
of am in this space where, and really that roots from what I learned in the Baha'i faith. I mean, a lot of who I am was molded from that.
Mm,
I think I just generally don't like rules that tell me drinking is not okay, or you
sure.
can't have sex before marriage, or like those kind of rules where it's like
Hmm.
for protection. But it's like you also got to explore life, like
Yeah.
especially as a female. But um, mainly like all the other principles of the Baha'i faith are wonderful, and it did mold me to who I am today. And so I've kept certain parts of it for sure very strong
Great.
in my life. But you know, respecting and honoring the earth was
Yes.
something I grew up with within that, and also within the way my mom raised us. And
Mm.
she would talk to the birds and the trees and the ground, and just everything was just so special to her when we were outside. And it created that love for us as well, my sister and I. So
Beautiful. So it sounds like you kind of have an innate connection to nature, thus
yeah,
plants.
I would say I definitely am spiritual with like the earth at this
Yeah,
point, because I
cool.
feel like if we all just put Mama Earth first, like corporations and politics, we would be in such a better place.
You're absolutely right. Yeah. And,
So,
and the crystals too, right? You've
yeah.
got a dope collection of crystals,
Oh,
life-size
well,
crystals
I
on
I
your.
definitely have some. So I have a friend. She's a Native American and grew up in New Mexico, and she's a Reiki healer. And
Mm,
I don't use those words or talk about that lightly, because I definitely think sometimes social media and trends and fads kind of take advantage of the true authenticity of what
yes.
Reiki and crystals and geology and astrological, all that stuff. It's real, but it
Yeah.
gets abused.
Hmm.
That might be a little controversial, but it's so important, because there's really authentic people out there that truly like grew up in it, study it, and believe
Hmm.
it, and are a part of that world. And so she came through, and she's a close friend of mine, and she picked out tourmaline, which is a rock of protection, and then the amethyst, which is
Emily.
yep. And so amethyst and tourmaline are kind of dispersed through the garden. And you can tell, I mean, the moment you walk into this place, I mean, people are just, you go to another land, you feel safe, there's serenity, you feel calm. Like, it's just it's a beautiful space for sure.
I love that. I'm gonna have to come up there and see it.
Yeah.
And you're absolutely right. Healer is a term that's thrown around quite a bit. So I totally get it. I actually had a guest on. Her name is Janice May. She's a Reiki practitioner, and she's trained overseas and did this her whole life. It's amazing. I highly recommend it. You should check it out. She's
Oh,
a
cool.
truly gifted. And
Amazing.
yeah. So what about the prickly pear? So you got
Yeah.
married,
Yep.
you're collecting. What about how? Wait,
Hmm.
yeah, let's go there. Sorry, I'm a
So
little
I was
scatterbrained.
actually, my career, well, I was a dental hygienist. I
Oh,
graduated dental hygiene school when I was 23 years old, and I never ever planned on leaving tooth industry. Like I can talk about still to this day, flossing and electric toothbrushes like nonstop, you know, although electric toothbrushes make me mad because they're not very sustainable and they're very wasteful, but I definitely think that can be fixed if corporations tried. But, so yeah, I was actually practicing dental hygienist and a hardcore plant collector, plant nerd, I like to say. And my husband and I, you know, moved in together, my boyfriend at the time, and we had this little apartment and it was 600 square feet and it was a fourplex. And I had literally my succulents and cacti. I really had like probably over 300 at that point. And they were just dispersed across everyone's like front porch because I couldn't fit it in the house. Obviously they wouldn't survive in it. So, you know, it was like a little family of like, you know, everybody took care of my plants. Anyways, so I got in this total freak accident in 2017. I won't get into it because it was just really hard, but it crucially injured my hip. And I was immediately put on disability, and I was at my lunch break when I got into this accident, and I was supposed to go back and see like my 1 o'clock patient. I ended up going back to work in excruciating pain. They had to cut my day short. I went to the emergency room. I couldn't go back to work. All this stuff went on. I had these x-rays done. They found out I had this huge tear in my hip. I needed to have surgery. But of course, being the earth muffin that I am, I'm like, okay, let me try to give myself like 6 months to try to heal naturally. Didn't work, ended up having to schedule for surgery. I was just so nervous because the surgery was very invasive, in my opinion. Because don't do it. I mean, do it. I don't know what to tell you, but when you YouTube a surgery and you see what actually happens to your body, you're like, oh my God, I can't do this. So that's what actually started the prickly pear. That accident was so painful and so difficult for me and actually changed my life and the way I could move my body permanently. But also birthed the prickly pear from it because I had nothing to do. You know, I have a dental hygiene degree. I don't have any other experience. I had always dabbled with hobbies, right? So I like plants. I loved photography, but I was no super professional photographer. I just did it here and there. And I just, you know, was at home sad. And I thought, I'm not a sad person. I want to pull myself out of this. What do I like to do? I like plants. I like people. I looked to Sacramento because I never bought any of my plants in Sacramento. They didn't have a plant culture here back then. And I thought, well, maybe I could start something. And that's literally how the prickly pear started.
Wow, that's incredible.
Yeah.
So did you start on Instagram or did you like do Etsy? What did you do in the beginning?
Yeah, I literally was like, okay, if I'm going to sell plants, you know, succulents specifically, I want to propagate them and I want to have my own pot design. And I thought, what do I love? And I was sitting with a friend and everything in our house is in mason jars. And I love mason jars. So I was like, she was like, what about like using your mason jars? I was like, well, I'd have to learn how to make a hole in the glass to make it legitimate with drainage. Cause you got to give your plants its best opportunity to live its best life, you know? And so I YouTubed how to drill a hole through glass. And I taught myself in my kitchen with my like hobbling hip how to drill through glass. And, you know, that was like, okay, I have this signature pot design. And I started painting them different colors. And I thought, okay, I didn't have business cards. I was like, I'll like use social media. Don't people use social media? And so I turned to Instagram and I looked up like businesses, plant shops. There really wasn't anything going on in Sacramento at that point in the plant world. And that's how I started. I thought of the prickly pear. I thought of 3 different names and I liked prickly pear because I grew up around these type of puntias and all types of prickly pear cacti in Arizona. And I thought, you know, that's such a fun name. It was engaging, it was cute. And like people didn't know anything about like Hispanic people knew about prickly pear, but like most people didn't. Yeah. Unless you grew up around it in Arizona. And so that's how it started. So I you know, created the prickly pear account with 0 followers in 2017 and told my friends to follow me and my family. They all thought I was crazy. And of course, and then it just slowly took off. I mean, I did a lot within that to make it work. But
That's awesome. Yeah, the name is very catchy and familiar, and just like super cute. The prickly pear.
yeah,
Prickly pears are cute, and now you see prickly pears like all over shirts, mugs. It's everywhere.
crazy. I never thought that would happen. That's when it was like, what? I walked into IKEA, 2 years ago? I think it was the beginning of the pandemic or right before. And I had been in business for 4, I'm going on 5 years. And I'm looking at the shower curtains and there's one of prickly pear cactuses. And I'm like, what? When did a prickly pear cactus become cool? Like,
cactus are booming now.
I know. I was like, okay.
Yeah. It's great though for people that like us that are in the business of selling plants or
wonderful, especially when you were like authentically there before it boomed. Like it feels even more special and sacred where it's like, cool, like this was something we really loved. And then now the world is enjoying that love as well.
Yeah, that's cool. When did you start collecting houseplants? Because I know you've got a plethora of houseplants, some dope ones too.
Yeah. I think once the prickly pear started kind of growing, it was almost like within 3 months. Like it wasn't like I was sitting there doing nothing and it just took. I was like just trying to put myself out there. I was looking into like, how do you become a part of a farmer's market? How do you get a business license? Asking a lot of questions, asking a lot of the wrong people the questions I needed answers to, and they try to point me in the right direction. And I lost track of your question.
Houseplants.
Yeah. So as I kept growing prickly pear, you just naturally, like on your Instagram, because your phone's always listening to you, things would like pop up in my discovery of like a tropical plant. And listen, I grew up around tropical plants too. My mom's house inside is full of them. And so, I never thought I'd get that much into it. And then my sister, prior to me becoming a tropical plant collector as well, she was obsessed with tropical plants before, and she's not even into cacti still. Like she loves tropical plants. So her house is covered in them. And so I just started like little by little doing the easy plants like pothos, because they just grow like a little waterfall. And I really like that look. And then as you get into it, you start like learning more about them and you see pictures of like really cool ones. And then I wanted to learn more about it. And I would just like connect with people on social media who did tropical plants and just personally start like buying them for my own collection. And then that collection grew huge.
Rad. So, I was going to ask you something about that. Oh, tropicals, cactus, or succulents, if you had to choose.
Oh,
like,
for sure. Oh, that's so hard. Really? Oh man. It's just so hard because you can really only have tropicals. You can't have succulents and cacti inside. If I could have succulents and cacti inside and they would survive and just live their best lives inside, I would probably cover my house inside with succulents and cactuses more than tropicals, because they need more water and they're not as sustainable. Sure. And I just live for anything that caters to sustainability.
Now that's a good segue into your purpose and mission with the prickly pear. I know sustainability is a part of it. You also have a service that you offer, a program that you offer, correct, where you work with adults with disabilities?
Yeah, absolutely.
What's that all about?
So when I first started, when I got in that accident, opened the prickly pear on Instagram and was just doing my little hustle, who knows where it was going. I knew, but everyone else was very doubtful. I just wanted it. I termed it as a nursery with purpose. And I still have that tagline on my everything, because I just think our world revolves around instant gratification. And I think that we lose sight of purpose and intention. And so I wanted people to feel connected to the earth. Great. These plants are amazing, but who makes these plants? Mama Earth makes these plants for our enjoyment and to better our air and better our food and the nutrients in our soil and all the things. And so that's why I've always kept purpose involved with it. And nature is therapeutic, right? So it literally heals us in so many ways. Like eating it, being around it, breathing it.
Yes.
And so I feel like therapy through plants is important for everyone, and specifically for children and for overlooked communities. And I had a cousin who I didn't see often, but when we would have family reunions, he has disabilities, and I just loved being around him growing up. I don't know, but those few times that I would spend vacations with him and the family, I loved being around him. And I think because I didn't like that I could tell other people were uncomfortable around him. And I just felt like that's not a good feeling. Why do you have to feel uncomfortable around someone? Why can't you just see like someone for who they are and share love? And so that's where it started. So working with adults with disabilities or developmental challenges or anything like that was something that I always wanted to be around at some point in my life. So throughout my years growing up in Arizona, I actually volunteered with Tempe ARC, which was an organization funded by the state for adults past the age of 22 when there's not a lot of programs for them anymore. I need to take a drink because I got
totally
something in my
fine.
throat.
It sounds like to me like you wanted to protect this disabled family member.
Yeah, I think a sense of protection and acceptance.
Yeah.
I always felt very free. Like I was a very goofy, like fun child in the sense of like, I kind of solo. Like people thought I was kind of weird, but I didn't care. I thought I was so funny and I just liked having a good time and I wanted to bring joy. And I think that, I wanted to do that with every single person, regardless of who they are, what they look like, how they act. And so, yeah, it was. And so, because of that introduction at such a young age, I just gravitated towards that. And even in dental hygiene school, I wanted to work with the adult with disability school to clean their teeth because you have to practice on all different kinds of people. And I specifically wanted to do that because I feel super comfortable being around people that are different from me. And I want them to feel accepted and welcomed. And so, yeah, it just kind of was always a part of my life. And so when I moved to California, there wasn't a lot of programs at all really in Tahoe for it. And then I came here, and when I started Prickly Pear, I was able to like incorporate working with them and plants into the Prickly Pear.
Now, how did you create this like modality of the program? Did you base it off anything that you've seen working, or did you just create it from scratch yourself?
Totally from scratch. I had no idea what I was doing. I think most of the stuff I've implemented in my business have literally just been random creative ideas that I'll like think of. And I'm sure I've grabbed inspiration here and there, but I really try to honor that creative thinking space. But yeah, I just knew that I wanted to provide a garden where these individuals could plant stuff, watch it grow, maintain it while it's growing, and then sell the produce. Yes. That is just literally where my head went, and so until I had the actual physical space to do that, I couldn't provide that. But when I did, I was able to, and we had a program. I'd see them every 2 weeks. Sometimes 3 times a month, 2 different organizations, and they'd come. We have a planter box here where they would plant their own vegetables and grow them. And then every few months we'd have a farmer's market during our public hours, and they'd sell like the tomatoes, or from our orange tree, they'd pick the oranges and sell them to my customers. And, I was going to make it a whole farmer's market, but then the pandemic hit. Yeah. Everything was on hold. They can't get transportation. It's been like so long since I've seen them, but I check in with the coordinators often, and there's just nothing that can be done at this point, and things aren't safe for everyone. So it is what it is, but it'll pick back up once things hopefully normalize.
Well, that's incredibly inspiring, and that's really, really kind of you, compassionate. I love that. So what about, you have you're open to the public there, correct?
Yeah, we are. So Prickly Pear started right in my little apartment. A few months after I started, my husband and I had found our first home to buy. So when we got that, I was like, listen, I can't afford a brick and mortar store. Why don't I just build this like carport in our backyard? put some tables, put all my plants, decorate it really nice, build a little do it at home greenhouse, and
Mhm.
open my house up to the public on Sundays. And I
Wow.
thought Sunday is like a chill day, right? Like people go to church, maybe they don't go to church and they like don't have much to do. It's like a chill day. It's a great day to go plant shopping.
Yes.
And it was in a neighborhood. I'm not a legitimate brick and mortar store. I don't want to bother my neighbors. So I said Sundays were my only public hours. And then that quickly turned into Monday through Saturdays, I would
Oh,
host
wow.
private events, which was just people would book pot and sips, which is a thing that I do. And it was inspired by paint and sips, but I'm no painter, but I
Mhm.
can definitely plant a little plant and keep it alive. And so that's where pot and sips came. And
Cool.
so that's where the concept of like, I really was only open on Sundays for many years. And then when I came to our final location where Prickly Pear has really expanded and just bloomed, I expanded to public hours being Thursday through Sunday.
Okay.
And then we still host private events every day of the week, you know, when we're booked.
It looks like a beautiful piece of property. People get married there, huh?
Yeah, so it's very multifunctional space, and it is again just a house, but it's in an area that's zoned for residential and commercial use.
Mm-hmm.
And so we've converted the house and the entire yard, which is a 1/4 acre, so it's a really large lot,
Mm-hmm.
into a desert garden oasis venue.
Rad.
And when you walk back here, it just feels like you're walking through Narnia, like that door where you're like, where did I just enter? And it's turned into this incredible venue. And, you know, a lot of people in the community have been a part of it. I had a female architect in town who designed the greenhouse we have, and we have this beautiful awning over our big desert garden that protects the plants. And she designed that. When we moved to this location, I was on crutches because I had just had my surgery. 30 people showed up, I've never met in my life, at our house to move all my plants and plant them in the
Aw.
ground for new locations. So, you know, this place has just constantly been a place of unity and love, and it still feels that way. So it's been a beautiful community space.
Wow, what a dream come true, and what a beautiful journey.
Yeah, it's wild.
That's rad. So
Yeah.
so what's next for the prickly pear?
You know, I everything has really come to fruition with the space, and it's crazy because when it was in my backyard, which we still currently live there, the woman who owns the space the prickly pear now is like, now that it exists in this new space, which it's been here since 2018, so it only happened like a year later after I started.
Mm,
She heard about me and my little business in my backyard through our local newspaper article. And
cool.
she literally reached out to me and asked me to buy her house because she didn't want a developer to get it because it was a really hot area. And
Mm,
she got cash offers from neighbors, like all sorts of stuff. She didn't have to
wow.
go through me who needed to get a loan and all this stuff. And you know, it when that happened, and then when I found out from the city that it was zoned for low grade commercial as well, it was like destiny, right? I was like, okay, I'm pretty sure this is my purpose. Like, I really need to just dive in deep. And so I've implemented different things through the years that have now become what it is when you see it on social media or you see on my website, all the things that we do, and the team does in the shipping fulfillment with our e-commerce store. There's a lot of things. It's really cool.
Yeah.
But the goal is to continue to have it here. I've considered, you know, I haven't considered, people have been like, don't you want to go to like a brick and mortar area where it's like a plaza? And I said, no, never. Like, the whole beauty of this space is that it's so outside the box. And when people walk in, they're just like, wow. And so I think that the future holds more sustainable implementation of products, because I have grown into a space where I actually manufacture my own products.
Mm,
And I have a local manufacturer that's female owned. So she sources the ingredients, the formulas, the packaging, and she's all about Mama Earth too. So I think I kind of want to lead that in the sense where I want people to know you can have really nice quality things that are sustainably made and mindfully, you know, chosen, like the product and the ingredients and the packaging.
yeah. Well, you have a unique approach that sets you apart from other uh, people in this business, for lack of a better term. Being in a neighborhood, having the homey vibe, being on site
Yeah.
too constantly, I'm sure
Yeah.
makes such a difference. You can really
Yeah.
like it's your whole life,
Right.
you know. So there's a lot of passion that maybe gets missed out on when you have to drive over to your spot in the morning, and you know what I mean, and
Yeah, it's different. And it's
leave
like,
9 to 5 and you're in a
I know. And
plaza.
yeah, I totally agree with that. And I think what I often, so I book, a lot of people book this as purely just a venue space. It's a very unique property, so it's hard to explain until you actually come and visit it. But
Mm,
we can continue having public hours while we have private events. Like a wedding will be going on, and then in the front half of the property, there's customers buying plants that have
cool.
no association to the wedding. That's like totally private. But yeah, I think that it's so important for you to love what you're doing. And I think that's everyone's goal, right? And I always tell people when I get pot and sips booked often, I host them myself, and I
Hmm.
will do a 15-minute introduction and tell them about how I started the Prickly Pear and entrepreneurship and the good and the bad of all of it. Um, and I think I always touch on during those talks before the pot and sip actually starts that I think our goal in life is to find purpose, right? I
Yes.
mean, to be able to apply purpose to what we're doing. If you don't feel like you're applying purpose to what you're doing, it doesn't fulfill you, and it leaves empty voids inside of you. And I think that it's so important for people to figure out their talent. And sometimes I think that
Mm,
that word holds a negative connotation, and people think that word can't be applied to them. Like, I don't have talent. Beyonce has talent. Like, you look at it like they'll divide it so heavily.
sure.
And I think I try to tell everyone, every single person on this planet was put here and has a talent. And our
Yes.
life goal is to figure out what that talent is. And you're not going to figure it out until you keep trying, you keep pushing yourself, and you keep failing until it starts to evolve.
Absolutely.
And the failing is painful, man. When you fail, it hurts. And that's, I think people get lost in that hurt feeling. And our
Mm,
goal is to come out stronger from that and apply what we learned. And once you can find your talent and you apply the purpose behind it, that's what cultivates authenticity. And that's what makes you feel, and people can feel the authenticity that you're trying to share.
yeah, failure can be really discouraging, but I'm a firm believer in our struggle, we can find our greatest strength. You know,
Agreed.
you can turn all of that and channel it, and I mean, be patient with yourself for sure. Like, you're 36 now, you said, right?
Right.
Took
Right.
you,
36. And who was like, I mean, I look like I'm 23, but it's fine. But it's like, who would have thought? I have no idea. To this day, people will be like, how did you start? Did you go to school for this and this and that? And I'm like, no, dude, I did not go to school for this. Like, I have no idea what I was doing. And I still have to, constantly dive into things super scared. But
yeah,
that's going to be those moments that dictate your life. And the goal is figure out how to get past the fear.
yeah. And sure, it didn't happen overnight. And I'm sure there were
You did
plenty of
not.
other ventures that you attempted over the years, right?
Oh, yeah. So many. I mean, I remember applying, I had created this new role. I had been with my boss for 5 years as a dental hygienist, and I had hired new hygienists. Like, I felt like I was a part of building this company. And I created this role to be a hygiene coordinator to help all the hygienists feel valued and feel like they had all their
Mm,
instruments and the things they needed, and just happy, and increase retention um, as for my employer. And I created this whole PowerPoint. And I remember spending 6 months doing this and trying to convince him. And I create this role. He tells me he was going to give it to me, but then he gives it to a girl that I actually hired for the company.
mm,
And I was like, what? Like, I was so hurt. And things like that. He did that because he made a smart decision. He made actually the smartest decision for his company, because I was a wild card. Although I showed like how good I was in these certain departments, I was still a wild card. And ultimately, because where I'm at today, I was meant for something else. And
yeah.
it's so hard to see that stuff. And I've had multiple things like that where it was just shut down. I put everything into it and it didn't work.
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
and that's just part of it.
Yeah. And if we go back to the earliest part of your story, it started with heartbreak, which probably could have felt like nothing was going right in your life, maybe some of the darkest times. And then it turns
Right.
into you got this beautiful plant collection, and
Right.
all of this is really inspiring.
Right. It's really wild. So yeah, it is interesting and it's fun to continue to evolve with it. And I have, you know, made mistakes myself even throughout building Prickly Pear. And
Mm,
I think the most important part as a business owner is to hold yourself accountable as much as you can and be transparent in that accountability. And if you make a misstep, don't shy away, don't sugarcoat it, just go straight at it, because it doesn't matter what anyone else is going to think of you. It matters about what you think of yourself. And
yes.
if you're not being honest and you're giving lies out just to make yourself feel protected, that will ultimately destroy you in the long run. And
Mm.
a false foundation has no longevity.
I was going to
So
ask you, is there any advice that you would give to somebody that's trying to get started on a plant business?
yeah, I definitely think it's not a trend. Like you
Mm,
can't like see that they're so cool and look at this. It's like you really have to get to know your product, right? So that means
mm,
it has to be something you love and enjoy. You're going to eat
yes.
it, sleep it, breathe it. And I was just um, like abnormally obsessed with these plants before it was never part of my plan to make it a business. And
Sure.
so I think that even if you're like an entrepreneur and you're like, I know I have this strength, I need to implement this strength somewhere. I think you still need to reflect on, what do you love?
Yes.
What makes you happy? What brings you joy? What do the things that bother you that you're like, I wish I could fix this? Like my husband is obsessed with garbage. He's like, if he doesn't work, he works for Tesla.
Uh-huh.
He's been with them for 5 years and he does the energy side of it. But okay, anyway, sorry, I'm not trying to throw that into it. But outside of that, he's obsessed with garbage. He's like, he always talks about like, I wonder if there's a way to like fix the garbage problem. Like there's got to be better options. Like he's always thinking about that. And
Mhm.
I think ultimately down the road, he'll probably do something with garbage. And it's like, those are the things where it's like, you got to reflect in your life. And what are you drawn to? Are you drawn to brewing beer? Are you
Yeah.
drawn to, drawing? Are you drawn to clay? Like, are you drawn to plants? I just don't think being an opportunistic person with something you don't like
Yeah.
is smart,
Well,
is smart,
and
you know?
it's always painfully obvious who's doing that
I
too.
know, I
So,
know,
you know, it,
I know,
and that's
totally.
and it's because there's so much competition in the plant world. That's what sets people apart, is that
Yeah,
authenticity anyways. So,
right, right. And I do think that I love entertaining. I have always been a little entertainer since I was little. And then the sense of entertaining, I love bringing people joy. I feel like I have this like capacity to give out joy and I want other people to feel it.
mm,
And I think it's because of my parents. And it is a privilege to even have two parents that have provided that kind of experience for me. And I feel like I want to share it with others as much as possible. And so I don't know how I got on that subject, but
no,
yeah.
no, that's great. I'm actually a substance abuse counselor, and sell plants on the side. Those are my two things. And this conversation has really inspired me and really pushes me, but I've been trying to find where those collide, or, where they intersect, find a way to have them come together. I do
Totally.
group therapy sometimes, and I bring plants, like we'll plant, but
Cool.
I want to do it on my own, not work
Yeah.
at a
Yeah.
treatment center. So
Yeah.
I'm hoping that's in the near future here. So you do installations too, right?
I
I
do.
saw the Christmas tree one. Oh my God. And the
I know
cock
it's
and balls.
great. I mean, it's so funny.
Wow.
I know it's funny because when I first started Prickly Pear, I was like, I would make like plant installations for myself, but I like
Hmm.
never thought about doing it for other people. And then I had some random realtor reach out to me to do like redo his backyard. And I was like,
Hmm.
and there, he's like, have you done it before? I was like, oh yeah. I'm like, no, I've never freaking done that. But there's a little bit of BS to like, there's a
Sure.
little bit of
Fake it till
BS
you
to
make it.
like, Yeah, you got to fake it a little bit, like where you're like, okay, I think I can do this. Like if I fail, then I fail, but I think I can do this. And so that's really where it started. And that was like the first 4 months. And I couldn't even do it right because I was like hobbling on my hip and all this stuff, but I made it work. And yeah, I do plant installations. And I think that's probably when you asked about like, what does the future hold for Prickly Pear? I definitely think I'm going to continue cultivating the existing space. I'm not trying to expand this to another location. I'm pretty sure Prickly Pear is going to stay right here. And because it's just such an amazing space as is, and there's already a lot of room to grow on this property. But I would love to continue building the product lines I have. But the plant installations are huge for me. I actually got this crazy gig that I can't share that was booked at a concert pre-COVID, but then the concert got canceled. And I was going to do a big plant installation for this stage and all the things. So, you know, my goal really is to continue doing plant activations and plant, you know, design for, you know, homes and businesses.
Cool. Yeah. The Christmas tree was really cool.
The Christmas tree is fun. I'm going to be making it again this year. And I'm going to up my game from last year. So we'll see how it goes.
Cool. So would you be down to field some of these questions?
Yeah.
All right. So the cultivarist asked, what is one of your best / funniest memories of gardening?
Oh gosh, I have so many. Okay. I think, I'll maybe think of something as I'm, you know, talking about this one, but I recently did a plant landscape. Oh no, I have a better one. I had started making videos before Reels existed on Instagram. I was doing like the videos and like posting some on YouTube. And I had made this whole video about how to stabilize and repot your pothos and add fresh soil and then put it in a bigger hanger pot. And I'm like videotaping the whole thing. And I spent so much time doing it and I hung it. And I'm saying goodbye to the video and ending the video. And as I'm speaking, the entire plant picture falls down behind me and splatters all over the ground. I ended up including that in the video because, again, that was authentic, right? It's like, that's actually what happens. And that happens to a lot of people. But another time, just one other thing that was really funny is I did a big landscape job and I have one employee who does shipping fulfillment, but he's also this buff guy who was a football player in the past. And he helps me with landscaping with like extra muscles. And I thought him and I could move this whole plant. And this cactus was massive. I mean, like it was like 9 feet tall. And I'm like, oh, we can do it. We've done big plants before. We ended up having to hire like 4 other people to help us move this thing because it was so heavy. So yeah, just the unexpected. But I guess that's the most funny stuff that's happened.
I saw that you used in one of your videos. I was looking at your Instagram today to get ready for this, and you lost your train of thought on a video and you included it. And I like that. It's like, it's real, you know, like, you're like, it was a take. It was intentionally left in there. You could see like, oh, I forgot what I was going to say. And then it jumps on to the next thing. That's cool. I like that.
Yeah.
I try to do that with the podcast.
Like, that's too. Real. It's like real, right? It's like, and there's entertainment in the real stuff. Like it doesn't have to be so curated all the time. And I love sometimes I take a good curated photo or, you know, there's no harm in that, but just trying to keep it real and authentic and all the avenues you play with are super important.
Yes, absolutely. Okay. Let's see. We got from Cactus Dan Man. How did you come up with the Kiss of Death bug spray?
Oh my gosh. So I have, like every plant person, especially in the succulent world, mealybugs is like the death of us, you know, and scales. And so I had tried all the natural stuff, all the previous older mentors that I had that I collected plants from. They said, take soap, water, chili paste, you know, peppermint oil, clove something. And I remember one lady, which I thought would be the most promising, was like, oh, boil tobacco and then extract the tobacco parts and then pour the water all over the root system in the plant. It worked, but it didn't.
That's crazy.
And so I did everything. I mean, for years. And so I really just stuck to like chili paste and rubbing alcohol,
Hmm.
and it just wasn't that good. And a customer of mine, and I still would use it, but then a customer of mine, who has nothing to do with like, she has a whole nother career doing something else. She's like, hey, I have this like extract my mom has of ghost pepper extract. Like, do you want to
Hmm.
try it? And I was like, sure. So then I blended it, my normal blend, and I used that pepper extract. And you really have to use the right amount. So my formulator kind of put it all together. I have a formula girl in town, my
Hmm.
manufacturer. And it was just like what we had made 3 versions of it. And it was like, I couldn't believe it just worked so well. And I told this customer, I was like, oh my gosh, I'm going to have to make this a product. Like, this is so cool. She's like, please make it a product. Like, I would love, she's like, I don't know how to use it. It's really spicy. Like, if you get that stuff on your hands,
Uh,
so that's how I created it, and I used it for myself for a long time. It worked really well. And so we spent about 6 months trying to bring it to market, and we did. And now we want to make it even bigger, but we have to go through registering it with California and the government. So
hmm.
we're actually going to be taking it off the market, which is so sad, but you have to do that in order to get it registered.
Okay.
So we're just, that's how it started, and that's how I created it. And now we'll probably put it back on the market in a few months. So all of you guys who are listening, this stuff works like magic on all foliage, succulents, cacti, tropicals, rares, your vegetable garden, your other gardens that we can't really speak of, like all sorts of stuff. It works like magic. But we are going to be bringing it back to market in a few months. So, and
Very
then we can
cool.
sell it on a mass level.
Now, is this something you want to apply at night?
No,
The
you
spray?
don't want to apply in the sun for
Yeah.
sure.
Okay.
You want to definitely apply early morning because it dries out within like, if it's outside within 10 to 15 minutes, if it's inside 30-ish.
Okay.
And the aerosols, that's why you have to get it registered, because we use such a hot pepper
Mm,
that it can be harmful, right? You don't want to put mace in your eye,
yeah.
right? Because it gets itchy and you could blind yourself. So it's like kind of the same thing where it's like we need to get this all registered so we can have the proper labeling on the product. We haven't had any bad reviews yet, and it's been out for so long. So we're just excited to get it official.
Legit. Cool. What other products are you manufacturing? You're doing skin products too, right?
Yeah, so it's so funny because it's like, what, a plant lady has a skincare line? Like, it's like kind of confusing. But I used prickly pear seed oil on my face for years. And I remember being approached by this company right when I opened the prickly pear account because they use prickly pear oil.
Hmm.
And they had this fancy bottle, and it was $125 for a 30 milliliter bottle, like small, like the same size that I sell. And it was $130. And I used the stuff and I was like, oh my gosh, this is magic. I will buy $130, save my money, won't drink, won't go out, and buy this bottle every 3 months to use it on my skin because my skin was glowing and so happy, and blended and took away that pimples, all the stuff. And so that's really how I was introduced to it. And so when I met my manufacturer in town, we had talked. I was like, listen, like maybe I can make my own oil and not be anything similar to that, be completely my own formulation. And so I wanted it, that bottle had like 10 other ingredients in it that half of them I couldn't understand what they were.
Mm,
Like, is this all prickly pear seed oil or what? And
right.
so we worked on a few blends that only had 3 ingredients that still only have 3 ingredients in them. And I used them again, the R&D and like the process of like testing out product market to customer base, a private customer base and all that. And people loved it. And they loved it just as much as me. And so I brought it to market. And it's called PP Body, and the PP stands for prickly pear. And I have 4 oils, and honestly, it just keeps growing, and it's really crazy to hear people's reviews. So
Very cool.
yeah, it's
I saw the
exciting.
pictures. I saw the pictures and the reviews on your website. We just got a couple more questions and we'll wrap this up.
Yeah.
Botanic cycles. What's a good lesson plants have taught you that can be applied to your life or to all life?
Well, plants literally promote patience.
Mm.
And we're not a very patient community. We're not a patient community worldwide. I mean, you go to the store now and you'll see a cactus with a fake flower glued on it.
Ugh.
And a guy want to vomit literally all over them every time I see it. And I can't tell you how much it breaks my heart when I have customers who send me pictures of their cactuses that are blooming. And they're like, it's had its bloom like all year round. And I'm like, that's not normal. Like this happens to me on a regular basis. Like
Wow,
people,
really?
and it's not anyone's fault. You're not
Sad.
ignorant. You're literally manipulated by our system. So I always try to, teach people like the reason why nature is so amazing, the reason why our earth works is because it's patient and it's mindful, and good things take time, right?
Mm.
Becoming a wise person takes time and experience. The earth is patient, it is wise, and it works in a way to make everything balanced. So I would say that's, my biggest thing.
I love that. Absolutely love that. All right. He said, same guy, Botanic Cycle said, goats are awesome, but why do you like them?
So honestly, I like goats because of the same reason why I like alpacas. I grew up around farms in Arizona. I was more in the country. And it was called Gilbert, and Gilbert was not developed back then. And now it's crazy. It's super developed, but it was like all cotton fields.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of our neighbors had horses. Like in the general community, there was like horses, goats, and my mom was always taking us outside to someone's farm and asking if we could volunteer. And I loved doing that. And I just think goats are just so sweet, and they literally will come and stand by you and just not do anything. And just having an animal like that near you, like, is very calming.
Yeah.
And a horse does the same thing, but a horse can be dangerous, right?
Sure.
And a goat, has the same kind of therapeutic value, in my opinion. And I also love goat cheese.
Ooh, goat cheese is good, and it's
I
not dairy.
love me some goat cheese. So
Easy on the
my goal
stomach.
is to, yeah, what'd you say?
Easy on the stomach. Goat
Yeah,
cheese.
exactly. And my goal is to actually, we're trying to buy a 5-acre farm, and we'd like to have our own regenerative farm, which is
Cool.
where we live off the land and we grow our own food. And
Yeah.
and my little girl, she's not spayed, or the boys are castrated, so she can't get pregnant. But when we have the appropriate land, we'd like to, like, cultivate and grow our own food.
Great. Love that. Final question. What's a good book you'd recommend?
Okay. Ed Cartoli. I don't know if you guys have heard of Ed Cartoli. He wrote The Power of Now.
Okay. I've heard of that.
And that has just become trendy. I'm telling you, my mom has been preaching this book since I can't even remember. She's been obsessed with Eckhart Tolle forever, and has given me 2 books by him. She gave them to me like 10 years ago, and now I'm all of a sudden seeing celebrities talk about the power of now, and I'm like, all right, but that's cool. Let that stuff trend, because it's very powerful.
Yeah.
And there's a few other. He has another one, something with love, that are incredible books. So I definitely recommend that.
Sounds like it's geared toward mindfulness.
Yeah, and like your power.
Okay.
And how to tap into your purpose, but it's spoken and written like so special. It's different.
Very cool. Awesome. So where can everybody find you?
You can look up our Instagram. It's The Prickly Pear, and it's the.prickly.pear. Or you can visit our website at thepricklypear.com. And there's lots that is brewing for the future. So you can definitely keep up. And I try to keep it fun, fabulous, and mindful.
I would say you've succeeded at that, and you did an excellent job in this interview. Thank you so much, Mona.
Yes, thank you for having me.
Cool. Stick around for a second. If everybody could please like, review, and subscribe to the podcast and hit that share button, I would appreciate that. Bye.